Introduction of the couple. Emma and Daniel Collins were the kind of couple that others secretly envied. Wherever they went, they radiated an effortless charm, a warmth that seemed to draw people toward them like moths to a flame. From the outside, their marriage was a picture of perfection, the kind that made it to the covers of wedding magazines or the heart of romantic novels. They lived in a cozy, beautiful house tucked away in an upscale suburban neighborhood, with ivy crawling along the walls and a well-tended garden that Daniel proudly maintained every weekend. Emma was known for her kindness, always ready to lend a hand to neighbors or organize community events. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, which gave her the flexibility to manage her home and career with ease. Her friends often joked that she was living the dream, a supportive husband, a flourishing career, and a home that felt like a sanctuary. Daniel, on the other hand, was the town's golden boy. He ran a successful real estate firm and was deeply involved in charity work. Tall, confident, and always quick with a laugh, he had the kind of presence that made people feel instantly comfortable. Children adored him, elderly neighbors trusted him, and his colleagues respected him. To everyone who knew them, Daniel and Emma were not just a couple, they were the ultimate team. Their social life was as lively as it was enviable. Weekend barbecues at their house were almost a tradition, complete with music, laughter, and the tantalizing aroma of grilled food. Holidays were spent traveling to beautiful destinations, their Instagram feed filled with pictures of sunset beaches, mountaintop views, and candlelit dinners. Anniversary celebrations were grand yet intimate, full of personal touches that spoke of deep affection and mutual respect. Emma often found herself thinking about how lucky she was. She would catch glimpses of Daniel across a crowded room, smiling, confident, effortlessly charming, and feel a surge of love and pride. Sure, no marriage was perfect, but she genuinely believed that whatever flaws existed between them were minor, easily brushed aside by their strong foundation of trust and love. The community often cited the Collins as role models. Young couples sought their advice on relationships, and older couples admired how they kept the spark alive. Whenever they were seen together, at the grocery store, at town hall meetings, or simply walking hand in hand down the street, they seemed perfectly in sync, sharing quiet jokes and unspoken glances that spoke volumes. For Emma, life with Daniel was everything she had ever wanted. There were no visible cracks, no obvious reasons to worry. Every morning began with a kiss, and every evening ended with laughter. It was the kind of life she had dreamed about as a young girl, stable, loving, and full of promise. But sometimes, life has a way of hiding storms behind the calmest skies, and Emma, lost in the glow of what she thought was perfection, had no idea that her world was about to change forever. Routine, life, and hidden secrets. At first, everything seemed normal. Emma and Daniel's daily life continued in the same comforting rhythm they had built over the years. Breakfasts together in the sunny kitchen, casual chats over morning coffee, goodbye kisses at the door. Nothing appeared out of place. Emma spent her mornings working from her home office while Daniel managed his real estate firm, often calling her during lunch breaks just to hear her voice. Their evenings were filled with dinners, Netflix marathons, and long, lazy talks about their dreams for the future. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, small changes began to creep into their lives. Daniel started working late more often. At first, Emma didn't think much of it. His firm had taken on a few big projects, and she understood the pressure. She admired his dedication, even joked about being a real estate widow when he missed their weekly Friday night dates. But as the weeks turned into months, the late nights became more frequent, and the excuses thinner. He would come home smelling faintly of unfamiliar cologne, different from the one he always wore. Sometimes his clothes were disheveled, his tie loosened in a way that suggested more than just a long day at the office. When Emma questioned him, he would smile a little too quickly, brushing her concerns away with a kiss on her forehead and a promise that things would calm down soon. Then there were the phone calls. At odd hours, Daniel's phone would buzz insistently. He always answered quickly, stepping out of the room, lowering his voice to a whisper. Once or twice, Emma caught snatches of conversation, names she didn't recognize, hurried promises to take care of it. When she asked who was calling, Daniel would offer vague explanations: work emergencies, last-minute client demands, business deals she wouldn't understand. Emma wanted to believe him. She told herself that marriage was built on trust, and Daniel had never given her a reason to doubt him before. Still, a quiet unease began to settle in the pit of her stomach, gnawing away at her peace. It wasn't just the calls. Daniel had become more guarded. He had changed the password on his laptop, something he had never felt the need to do before. His smiles sometimes seemed forced, his laughter a little too loud, as if he was trying to cover something up. He grew distant, often lost in thought even when he was sitting right beside her. Their conversations, once effortless and full of shared dreams, became strained. Emma found herself hesitating before asking simple questions, afraid of what the answers might reveal. Nights grew colder, both literally and figuratively, as Daniel began sleeping closer to the edge of the bed, his back often turned toward her. Friends and family didn't notice, or if they did, they said nothing. Outwardly, the Collins still appeared to be the golden couple, hosting parties and posing for pictures. But Emma, who knew Daniel better than anyone, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The routine they had built together now felt like a fragile stage set, beautiful from a distance, but hollow and cracking behind the scenes. And deep down, Emma feared that the life she thought she knew so well was only a carefully painted illusion, about to shatter under the weight of hidden secrets. Suspicious behavior. The late-night phone calls grew harder for Emma to ignore. It became almost routine, the shrill buzz of Daniel's phone cutting through the silence of the bedroom at odd hours. At first, Daniel would murmur reassurances, pressing a quick kiss to Emma's forehead before slipping out of the room to answer. But over time, he stopped even trying to explain. He would simply grab the phone, his expression tightening, and disappear into his office, sometimes staying locked away for hours. Emma tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the excuses no longer made sense. Real estate emergencies didn't happen at 2 a.m. Clients didn't call repeatedly with panicked voices that made Daniel pale and short-tempered. Something else was going on, and whatever it was, Daniel was determined to keep it from her. The sudden business trips began not long after. Daniel would come home, flustered and tense, throwing clothes haphazardly into a suitcase. "Just a couple of days," he would mutter, avoiding her eyes. "A client needs me to close a deal out of town." Sometimes he would be gone for a weekend, other times it stretched into almost a week. When Emma asked for details, where exactly he was going, who he was meeting, Daniel's answers grew vague. "It's complicated," he would say, flashing a tight smile. "Don't worry about it. I've got it under control." Emma tried to stay busy during his absences, filling her days with work, coffee dates with friends, and long walks through the park. But a constant uneasy ache gnawed at her. When she called Daniel while he was away, he often let the calls ring through to voicemail. When he did answer, the background noise, distant voices, the clink of glasses, unfamiliar sounds, hinted at places that didn't sound like hotel lobbies or quiet meeting rooms. One night, after a particularly long trip, Daniel came back with a bruise darkening his jaw. He brushed it off casually. "Just a stupid accident at the gym," he said. But Emma noticed how his hands trembled slightly when he said it, how his eyes darted away from hers. There were other signs too, subtle but undeniable. Receipts for expensive dinners in cities Daniel swore he hadn't visited. A strange key she found in his jacket pocket, heavier, old-fashioned, belonging to no door in their home. A jacket she didn't recognize tucked into the back of their shared closet. And worst of all, the faint scent of perfume lingering on his clothes, floral and unfamiliar, nothing like her own. Emma's mind raced with possibilities, each darker than the last. Was Daniel hiding an affair? Was he involved in something illegal? The man she thought she knew, steady, honest, reliable, was slipping through her fingers like sand. Every sweet memory, every moment of laughter, now seemed laced with doubt. The life they had built together no longer felt safe. It felt like a trap, a carefully constructed facade, hiding secrets so heavy, Emma feared they would soon tear their world apart. And deep in her heart, she knew something was coming, something she wasn't prepared for. Discovery of a hidden room, secret place. The thought gnawed at Emma constantly. Daniel was hiding something. She just didn't know what. The phone calls, the bruises, the perfume that wasn't hers. It all added up to something she couldn't ignore anymore. But where was the proof? Where was he keeping his secrets? Then, one evening, fate stepped in. Daniel was away on yet another business trip. Emma had spent the day trying to distract herself, but an invisible force kept pulling her back toward one question. What is he hiding? She wandered the house, running her fingers over familiar furniture, old photographs, their life together, a life she had always believed was real, but now it felt like a carefully designed illusion. She wasn't looking for anything in particular when she entered Daniel's home office. She had been there countless times before, sitting on the couch while he worked, flipping through his books, laughing at his ridiculous collection of old maps. It was his space, but it had never felt off-limits. Until now. Now, as she stood in the dim evening light, something felt different. A strange silence, a shift in the air. And then she saw it, a faint scratch mark near the corner of the bookshelf. It wouldn't have meant anything on its own, but as Emma stepped closer, she noticed something else. The bookshelf wasn't flush against the wall. Her heartbeat quickened. Slowly, she reached out and ran her fingers along the edges. Her breath caught when she felt a tiny gap, just enough space for her nails to slip into. She pulled. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a reluctant creak, the entire shelf shifted. A cold wave of fear rolled through her as she took a step back. A hidden door. She stared at it, her pulse pounding in her ears. Why would Daniel have a hidden room in their house? And why had he never told her about it? For a long moment she hesitated, but curiosity, or was it fear, won. She grabbed the handle and twisted. Locked. Of course it was locked. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for something, anything that could help her get inside. And then she remembered. The key. The strange, old-fashioned key she had found in his jacket pocket weeks ago. The one that had no match in their house. Fumbling, she ran to the bedroom, yanked open the drawer where she had hidden it, and rushed back. Her hands trembled as she inserted the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. Click. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, windowless room. The air inside was stale, carrying a faint scent of dust and something else, something metallic. Emma stepped inside, her breath shallow. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the dimness, and as they did, her stomach lurched. On the far wall, neatly arranged in rows, were boxes, dozens of them, some small, some large, all carefully labeled, and on the desk in the center of the room sat a locked briefcase. Her fingers twitched. Whatever was inside this room, this was Daniel's secret, and she wasn't leaving until she found out exactly what he had been hiding from her. Confrontation with clues. Emma stood frozen for a moment, staring at the boxes neatly stacked against the walls. The silence of the hidden room was deafening, broken only by the hammering of her heart. A part of her screamed to turn back, to close the door and pretend she had never seen any of this. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when the truth was finally within reach. Her fingers brushed across the first box, and she hesitated only a moment before lifting the lid. Inside were folders, hundreds of them, worn, some yellowed with age. She pulled one out and flipped it open. Documents, but not the kind she expected. These weren't real estate papers or client contracts. They were official-looking forms, stamped with government seals, names she didn't recognize, and long strings of numbers and codes. Some pages were covered in foreign languages she couldn't read, others in dense legal jargon. Emma's brow furrowed as she dug deeper. Birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, but none of them belonged to people she knew, and some bore Daniel's face, only with different names. Why would Daniel have fake identities? The realization made her knees weak. She dropped the folder and stumbled back, breathing hard. Her hand knocked into the briefcase on the desk, sending it sliding slightly across the surface. The briefcase. With trembling hands, she turned the lock. To her surprise, it clicked open easily, as if it had been waiting for her. Inside were photographs, neatly bundled in stacks with rubber bands. Emma picked one up. At first glance, it was innocent. A picture of Daniel laughing with a group of people she didn't recognize. A crowded street somewhere she couldn't place. But as she sifted through more, the images grew darker. Pictures of shadowy meetings in parking lots, Daniel exchanging envelopes with serious-looking men. A blurry photo of him standing near a black car, its license plate carefully obscured. Another photo, this time of a woman and a child, smiling, waving at the camera. Emma's stomach twisted. Who were they? Why did Daniel have their picture? Tucked in the bottom of the briefcase was a small, worn notebook. Opening it revealed pages filled with coded notes, dates, and names. Some were crossed out, others were circled in red ink. At the very last page, scrawled hastily, was a message. If anything happens, burn it all. Emma's fingers went numb. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't something simple or forgivable. This was something bigger, something darker. Something that Daniel had gone to great lengths to keep buried. The man she thought she knew, the man she trusted with her life, was a stranger. She stood there, surrounded by evidence of a life she had never even imagined, her mind spinning with possibilities. Was he a criminal? A spy? Was her marriage even real, or just another part of whatever secret life he was leading? Emma knew there was no turning back now. She had opened a door that could never be closed, and whatever truth lay ahead, it was going to shatter everything she thought she knew. Emotional turmoil. Emma sat on the floor of the hidden room, her back against the cold wall, the open briefcase beside her like an open wound. The documents, the photographs, the coded notes, they stared back at her, whispering a truth she didn't want to hear. But still, some part of her, stubborn, desperate, clung to the image she had of Daniel. The Daniel who kissed her goodnight. The Daniel who remembered her favorite flowers. The Daniel who once cried during a movie because the ending was too beautiful. How could that Daniel be the same man who hid secret identities, mysterious contacts, and coded notebooks? How could the life they had built together be based on lies? Emma pressed her palms to her temples, willing the flood of emotions to stop. Her mind raced in circles, creating and destroying explanations at a frantic pace. Maybe there was another reason for all this. Something she wasn't seeing. Maybe Daniel was involved in something dangerous, but for a good cause. Maybe he had hidden this from her to protect her. Maybe. But the maybes felt thin, like paper shields against the oncoming storm. Tears blurred her vision as she struggled to breathe. She thought of all the little moments they had shared, laughing over burnt dinners, planning vacations, dreaming about starting a family. Were those memories real, or were they just part of a life Daniel had constructed to keep her close and unaware? Emma clutched the notebook in her lap, feeling its rough edges dig into her skin. She thought of confronting him, demanding answers, but the fear gnawed at her. What if he lied again? Worse, what if the man who came home wasn't Daniel at all, but someone she wouldn't even recognize? Trust, once so natural, so absolute, now felt like a dangerous risk. 1,000 questions swirled inside her. Was she in danger? Had anyone else known? Had their friends, their family suspected? Had she been blind all this time, seeing only what she wanted to see? And underneath it all, a deep, aching sadness. Because no matter how much she wanted to deny it, some part of her already knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. The woman who had walked into this room hours ago was gone. Left behind was someone new, someone who knew better than to believe in perfect marriages or untouchable love. Emma wiped her tears away with the back of her hand. Her heart still screamed for Daniel, for the man she thought he was. But her mind had begun to armor itself, to prepare for the confrontation that was now inevitable. She gathered the documents, the photographs, the notebook, and tucked them into a duffel bag. If she was going to face Daniel, she needed to be ready. She needed to be strong. Because whatever explanations he gave, whatever story he tried to spin, Emma knew one thing for certain. The truth was already in her hands, and it was more powerful and more devastating than any lie he could ever tell. Hiring help or investigating alone. The night was heavy and still as Emma sat at the kitchen table, staring at the duffel bag stuffed with secrets. A single lamp threw a pool of light over her scattered notes, the photographs, the strange documents she had found. She had thought finding the hidden room would bring clarity. Instead, it had plunged her deeper into confusion. Now, she faced a choice: confront Daniel immediately or dig deeper and learn the whole truth, before he had the chance to lie to her again. The thought of waiting, of living another day under the same roof with a man she no longer fully trusted, made her skin crawl. But rushing in blind would be worse. If Daniel was involved in something dangerous, and the evidence suggested he was, she needed to be careful. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. The idea of hiring someone felt wrong, invasive even, but Emma had lost the luxury of trust. She quickly searched for private investigators in the area, discreet ones who could move quietly without alerting Daniel. After a few minutes, she found a name that kept appearing with glowing, if cautious, reviews: David Russo, Discreet Investigations. Emma hesitated over the call button, chewing her lip. What if this backfired? What if Daniel found out? But what other choice did she have? Before fear could paralyze her, she hit call. The line rang twice before a low, calm voice answered. Russo speaking. Emma took a deep breath. I need help, and I need someone who can be absolutely silent about it. Without pressing for details, Russo arranged a meeting for the following morning at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop downtown. He asked her to bring anything she had found and promised to guide her from there. After ending the call, Emma stared into the darkness beyond the kitchen windows. The house, once her safe haven, now felt like an unfamiliar battlefield. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside made her flinch. She almost felt relieved when she thought about handing this burden over to someone like Russo, a professional. Someone who could help her peel back the layers of Daniel's lies without putting herself directly in harm's way. But even as she planned to meet Russo, a small, stubborn part of her clung to another idea, following Daniel herself. What if she trailed him one night, watched where he went, who he met? What if she could catch him in the act, see the truth with her own eyes instead of secondhand reports? The risk was enormous. If Daniel caught her, there was no telling how he would react. She didn't even know what kind of man he really was anymore. Emma sat back, exhausted. She realized she could do both: let Russo dig officially, and meanwhile follow her instincts when opportunities came. Because she wasn't just fighting for answers anymore. She was fighting for her future, and no matter what it took, Emma knew she wouldn't stop until she uncovered everything. The shocking truth revealed. Emma sat at the corner table of the small, dimly lit coffee shop, the duffel bag tucked securely at her feet. Across from her, David Russo flipped through the photographs and documents with an unsettling calmness. Hours seemed to pass in silence before he finally spoke. You were right to come to me, Russo said, his voice low and serious. This isn't just some affair or minor secret. Your husband, he hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening, has been living a double life, and not the kind you think. Emma's heart dropped. What do you mean? Russo leaned closer. Daniel Whitmore isn't his real name. His real name is James Carter. He used to work for a covert government agency, off-the-books kind of stuff, until he disappeared about 7 years ago. He was declared dead. Emma stared at him, her mind blank. Dead? Pusso continued, tapping the pile of documents with 2 fingers. When he died, He didn't actually die. He went underground, took a new identity, started over. Looks like he was part of a classified operation that went sideways. Badly. He had to vanish, for his safety and probably for yours too. Emma struggled to process the words. Her husband, the man who cooked Sunday dinners and fixed leaky faucets, was supposed to be dead. A man with a different name, a different life. But why? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why would he stay hidden? Why wouldn't he tell me? Russo gave her a grim look. Because he wasn't just running from enemies, he was running from the government too, from both sides. Whoever he crossed, they're dangerous. If you knew, you would have been a liability, a target. Emma slumped back in her chair, feeling the weight of it all crush down on her. Had Daniel ever truly loved her? Or was she just part of his cover? Russo must have seen the fear and pain on her face because his voice softened. It looks like he tried to leave it all behind. He built a real life with you. But ghosts don't stay buried forever. Someone must have found him. That's why he's been acting strange. That's why all the late-night calls and sudden trips. Emma thought of the bruises, the hushed conversations, the strange perfume. It all made a terrible kind of sense now. She swallowed hard. Is he in danger now? Russo nodded grimly. Very likely. And if you're tied to him, you might be too. Emma closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. The man she loved wasn't who she thought he was. But at the same time, maybe he was. Maybe James, had built a life with her because it was the one real thing he had left. But now that life was unraveling, and Emma knew she had a decision to make. Would she walk away from the man who had lied to her, or stand by him now that she knew the terrible, complicated truth? Either way, nothing would ever be simple again. Her reaction and decision. Emma drove home in a daze, Russo's words echoing in her mind like a relentless drumbeat. James Carter. Dead man. Secret life. Danger. The man she had promised to love forever wasn't even the man she thought he was. Their marriage, their life, their memories, all were built on lies, half-truths, and shadows. When she pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was already there. A sick wave of dread rolled through her. He's inside, waiting. Does he know I know? Emma sat in the car for a moment longer, breathing hard, trying to steady herself. She thought of driving away, of leaving everything behind. But the Emma who had uncovered the truth, the one who had stepped into that hidden room and faced the darkness, wasn't a coward anymore. She would confront him. Inside, the house was quiet. Daniel was sitting in the living room, his phone in his hand, looking strangely tense. The moment he saw her, he stood up quickly. "Hey," he said carefully. "I didn't expect you back so soon." Emma dropped her bag on the floor with a heavy thud. She looked him straight in the eyes she used to know so well, and spoke quietly. "Or, should I say, James?" Daniel's face drained of color. For a few seconds he said nothing, just stared at her as if she had slapped him. Then he sat back down heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I can explain," he said, voice low. "But it's not going to make it better." Emma crossed her arms, struggling to keep her voice from breaking. "Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I just another part of the lie?" Daniel looked at her, real pain in his eyes. "You were the only real thing in my life. I never meant to drag you into this. I wanted a normal life. With you." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Normal?" She laughed bitterly. "You built our marriage on a lie, Daniel, or James, or whoever you really are. How do I know anything between us was real?" He got up, crossed the room in 2 strides, and stopped a few feet away from her, close but not daring to touch. "It was real," he said fiercely. "Everything I feel for you is real. I left that life behind to have this. To have you." Emma's heart twisted painfully. A part of her wanted to believe him. A part of her still loved him. But trust, once shattered, was nearly impossible to piece back together. She stood silently for a long moment, weighing the broken pieces of her heart against the life they had shared. She could walk away, expose him, destroy everything they had left. She could protect herself, or she could stay, fight through the lies, try to rebuild something out of the ashes of their shattered trust. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice trembling but strong. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, "but I know one thing. I'm not running. Not yet." Daniel's eyes filled with something raw, hope, regret, love. Emma turned away, her mind still a storm, but her heart, somehow, steady. If there were going to be answers, if there was any hope for redemption, it would start here, with brutal honesty, with slow, painful rebuilding, or maybe with goodbye. Only time would tell. Conclusion and new beginning weeks turned into months. The house that had once been filled with laughter, shared dreams, and hidden secrets now stood eerily quiet. Daniel, or James, had respected Emma's request for space. He moved out the next day after their confrontation, leaving behind only a single note. "I love you. I always have. I hope someday you'll believe that." At first, Emma floated through her days like a ghost, trying to make sense of a life that suddenly didn't feel like her own. Friends called, worried. She gave them careful answers, hiding the truth she wasn't ready to share. Some mornings, she woke up gasping from dreams where Daniel's face blurred into a stranger's. But slowly, painfully, she began to heal. She started running again, feeling the strength return to her legs with every mile. She took on new projects at work, filling her days with purpose instead of regret. She even traveled alone for the first time, a short trip to the coast where she walked the beaches at sunset and thought about everything she had lost and everything she had survived. The most surprising thing wasn't that she missed him. She did, in ways that hurt to admit. It was that she missed herself more. The version of Emma who had believed in simple, unbreakable love without question. But now she was someone stronger. Someone who knew that love could still be real, even if it was imperfect, complicated, and built on broken truths. Someone who understood that forgiveness wasn't weakness, it was freedom. In the early spring, Emma finally made her decision. She filed for a legal separation. It wasn't a clean break, not hatred, not punishment. It was a step toward something new, a chance to redefine her life on her own terms. One evening, after signing the final papers, she stood on the front porch of what had once been their shared home, keys in her hand, and smiled, not with bitterness, but with a quiet kind of pride. She had loved, she had been hurt, and she had chosen herself. Emma packed only what mattered: photographs of real moments, her grandmother's locket, the first novel Daniel had given her, a reminder that even lies couldn't erase every piece of truth. As she closed the door behind her, she didn't feel sorrow. She felt something else rising in her chest, something fierce and beautiful. Hope. Her story wasn't ending here. It was just beginning. A new city waited, new friends, new adventures, a life she would build, not on someone else's secrets, but on her own strength and truth. Emma stepped into the golden light of the setting sun, her heart lighter than it had been in years, no longer defined by the man she had loved, but by the woman she had become.